So here we do an experiment. This experiment is for Spotify streaming listeners. So what we're doing is we're creating listeners by hand, just like Stella's doing right now, with the hand registering to Spotify to an IP proxy, IP mobile proxy. So the registration is just like as if somebody in Germany used the phone to register to Spotify, so that shouldn't be any problem. And then here we have for each day one chapter, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days so far. We started in September 5, and then here we have a number how many times the loops was done. So what is one loop? One loop is when you register to all of these accounts in the emulators, to all of the Spotify accounts, and then you let the songs that we are checking from the artists at least one time running. That means the expected listeners that is counted from one loop is, in this case, 7 emulators on the loop. So 7 listeners with each loop. So when there is 8 or 9 loops, in one case there was 5 because 2 emulators was off, but then the expected listeners is 61 for September 5. Then there's so here we have the loops, then here's the expected listeners, 61. Then here we have the actual listeners, the actual listener count on that day that we see in the Spotify app. So when there's artist 1, in this case Muthomi Njeru, and artist 2, The Rebuilders, when we go to the Spotify profile of that artist, we will see this monthly listeners, in this case 2 and 7, that's how it started. And then what was added on the end of the day was 9 and 14. No, it was not added. On the end of the day it was 9 and 14, which means 7 was added on both. And then we do this every day. And then here we also have the source of streams, playlist. What does it mean? When we register, we let the playlist run in where the artist is inside to gain the listeners. And then here 1 IP per 7 emus means we use 1 mobile proxy for the emulators. So I think that is all information. Yeah. And then that's how we do the experiment. And the next day we look at exactly the same matrix and we write down everything. We do the loop again multiple times. We write down the expected listeners, the actual listeners, and then we see on the next day there was no listener added. So that was like, huh? Why is there listener deducted? Okay, so we continue the experiment. On the next day, September 7, we had the same, no listener added. So then we were thinking, okay, something is wrong in our experiment. Then we realized we've been using the this router, and we have 2 routers. They are both on the same provider here in Philippines, and the LAN cable of that router goes into that router, and we have that router connected to NordVPN in Germany, to a normal, I think it is UDP connection from NordVPN, and this one has no VPN, so this one is from Philippines, because the Wi-Fi from this one you can use and the Wi-Fi from this one you can use, and this is always routed to the NordVPN, and this one is not routed through VPN, just to the Philippine provider. And we've been realizing that when we're doing the loop, we was connected to this router, so the traffic was routed not only to the proxy but as well to the NordVPN. And I'm not sure if it goes first to the NordVPN server and then to the proxy, or first to the proxy and then to the NordVPN, but that could have been a possible reason why there was deductions. That's what I thought first. But then on the next day, on September 8th, we've been changing to that router, which is the PH router. And on the end of the day, we still had no more listeners. So we was doing the loop again 12 times, expected of 84 listener. Then on September 9, 4 days later from when we start the experiment, we suddenly saw 224 listeners on artist 1 from Mutomi Ninchero and 223 listeners from the Rebuilders, the second artist, in the Spotify artist profile from that artist. And then we was counting the listeners from day 1, 2 and 3, and it was exactly matching to that number of listeners that was added. So that indicates that these 3 days was counted 3 days later or 4 days later and then added to the profile, which is strange because usually Spotify is updating the monthly listeners on a daily basis, and in this case on a 4 daily basis. So we are not sure what is going on. That's why we keep continuing with the experiment. And then today is September 10. We will do exactly the same like the other days. We will use the router, this one, the PH router. We route all the traffic to the proxy, mobile proxy Germany. We will use the same artist. We will use the playlist to play. Then we will do multiple loops. We write down the expected listeners and the actual listeners. And today in the morning we wrote down the actual listeners and nothing changed from yesterday. So this was yesterday morning, this was 24 hours later this morning, and no change again, just like before. So it could be, now we can only make suggestions, it could be that Spotify did change the statistics for monthly listeners to be updated every day to maybe every 3 days, because that's how it looks like, right? 3 days come together, then be counted, and then 3 days may be off, and then 3 days counted together. I'm not sure if that is the case. So I will also watch another artist in where you can see if statistic gets updated daily, so that we can compare. So that's the experiment that we are doing. Of course, there could be also multiple reasons why there's 3 or 4 days deduction of listeners and then suddenly they're coming in. I don't know. Let's see. I hope the continuing of the experiment will give more clarity about that.